Every year, the Hebrew Academy in Israel picks a word, the most popular word of the year. And so this past week, that Hebrew Academy in Jerusalem didn't choose the Hebrew word for booster, didn't choose the Hebrew word for variant or for COVID, but chose the word tirlul, which means lunacy. Lunacy was the word that was chosen as the Hebrew word that defines 2021. It's been a year of lunacy in many ways. Many things that you and I thought we would never see, we saw, and we experienced. Many of us firsthand. Whether you're in Houston or in Israel or Washington, D.C., no matter where we were, there were things that we saw, things we never could have imagined happened. It was a year of lunacy in many ways. And with all the bright spots that may have occurred in our lives and in the life of our country and our world, many things happened that really defined lunacy. And now at the eve of this new year, it's easy to be full of despair, to assume that 2022 will be worse than 2021 or 2020, to give up, to be pessimistic about the future for ourselves, our loved ones, our community, our nation, our world. And if we felt this way, we wouldn't be alone. In our Torah portion this week, Moses felt the same way. And imagine Moses, chosen by God, promised by God that he could go down to the palace of Pharaoh and simply say to Pharaoh, "Let my people go." And Pharaoh would immediately do so. Moses had the promise of God. Moses was full of confidence. And yet what happens when he goes to Pharaoh? Pharaoh not only says no, but he doubles the work of the Israelite slaves. He tells the Hebrew slaves that no longer will they have bricks, but they have to make their bricks from straw and then make the construction, the buildings that they were tasked to do. And they had no more time to do it. Their work was doubled. And so the people complained to Moses. And imagine Moses' despair. He was promised by God of a better future. And yet when he goes to Pharaoh, Pharaoh rejects his claim and doubles the work of the Hebrew slaves. You can't blame Moses for almost giving up, for wanting out of the job, for feeling that it was a time of lunacy, of tirlul. And yet how does God respond to Moses' despair? God is upset. God is angry at Moses. And according to tradition, God says to Moses, "How can you be this way? I made similar promises to the patriarchs, to the Avot, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they never despaired. I told Abraham that this land would be the land that I will show you, and yet Abraham had to pay for a burial plot for his wife Sarah. I told the same thing to his son, Isaac, and yet Isaac couldn't even find water when his servants dug for wells in that land. And I told the same thing to Jacob, that this land would be the land of your ancestors. And yet Jacob couldn't find a place to pitch his tent." But yet the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and for that matter, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, were never full of despair. They never gave up. They still trusted me. They still had faith. They still believed in the promise of a better future. You, Moses, did not. And so according to tradition, this is the main reason why Moses is shut out from ever entering the promised land. Moses didn't believe in the promise of a better future. He lost hope. And so Moses, in a way, in a very important way, is eventually punished for losing faith. No, you and I don't have to be Moses. It's easy to be full of despair. And as I said, we wouldn't be alone. Moses, as great as he was, felt the same. But can we have some of that belief that despite our present circumstances, there is still a promise of a better future for ourselves, our community, our great nation in this world? This week I read a great commentary from one of my teachers, Ilana Kershaw. And she writes, "What can God's response to Moses teach us about the way we can regard our most difficult moments?" Because no matter what happens in 2022, there will be difficult times for you and I. What can God's response to Moses teach us about how you and I can regard and deal with our most difficult moments? She writes, all too often the anguish of our present reality seems strikingly at odds with the future you and I hope to envision. She writes, about a month ago, the New York Times ran a Metropolitan Diary column by a woman who remembered her first Friday night in the big city of New York. It was a freezing winter evening, and the woman was all alone. With nothing else to do, she walked up and down Broadway, looking into restaurant windows. She paused when she saw a couple sharing a pizza, each holding up their slices as if making a toast. The lonely woman, new to the city, felt sure that she would never find that sort of intimate companionship. But sure enough, 15 years later, she and her husband were sitting in a pizza shop on a cold winter night. Remembering her first Friday night in New York, she held up her slice of pizza as if making a toast. This woman's pizza toast, like God's words to Moses, is a reminder that our human perspective is limited. It's purposely limited. And only God knows when and how our destiny will ultimately unfold. And the question for you and I at the eve of a new year, rather than despairing at the bleakness of the present moment, can we raise a toast in hope and faith to a brighter, more redemptive future? Shabbat Shalom.